Lexus once built a luxury sedan with the heart of a heavy-duty commercial truck. An iron block, 7 main bearings, Italian sheet metal wrapped around the kind of mechanical sincerity that heavy equipment manufacturers dream about. It was designed to outlast its owners, a genuine BMW competitor with unlimited ambition and Japanese precision. But when it arrived in showrooms, the very people it was built for hated it. This is the story of the most overbuilt mistake in automotive history. The story begins in the late 1980s, when Japan's asset bubble was at its peak. Toyota had access to virtually unlimited capital, and the company was willing to invest in projects that would have been unthinkable in leaner times. The brief was direct. Build something different from the LS400 isolation chamber. The BMW 5 Series was the benchmark, not the Mercedes S-Class. Where the LS pursued silence and absolute comfort, the new project would pursue what Toyota called grand sport positioning. Sharper handling, more responsive steering, a genuine connection to the road. But there was a practical reason for the project too. A rising yen was squeezing Toyota's export margins, so the company needed a car built for the Japanese domestic market first. This vehicle, called the Toyota Aristo, would generate revenue in yen while sharing development costs with the export model that would eventually become the Lexus GS300. It was a financial hedge. But it was also something far more ambitious. The engineering team chose a double wishbone suspension for both front and rear axles. They chose an inline 6-cylinder engine rather than a V6, aligning with the European benchmark vehicles that favored the straight-six inherent balance. These were deliberate, costly decisions made during a boom. The cars launched into something very different. The Japanese asset bubble collapsed in 1991. Just months after the Aristo's debut. The North American GS300 arrived in 1993 into a luxury market that was not looking for an experimental sports sedan from a brand built on tranquility. By 1997, the experiment was over. Lexus wrapped a mechanical sincerity in silk, then sold it to customers who wanted isolation. But Toyota understood that economic ambition alone would not sell cars in the West. To truly challenge the German establishment, they needed a visual language that spoke with a European accent. So, while engineers calculated suspension geometry and currency exchange rates, another team was deciding how this car would appear when it finally stood in American showrooms. The answer would come not from Toyota's domestic design studios in Toyota City, but from a studio in Turin, Italy, where Giugiaro's team worked on the project. This outsourcing of design authority signaled how serious Toyota was about creating something genuinely different from their existing lineup. Toyota commissioned Ital-design Giugiaro to shape the exterior. This was a deliberate choice to import European aggression into a Japanese luxury brand that had built its reputation on restrained elegance and careful predictability. Giorgetto Giugiaro's studio had defined the look of modern sports cars for decades, from the Lotus Esprit to the original Golf. Toyota wanted that sensibility translated into a 4-door sedan. The result was a fastback silhouette that abandoned the traditional 3-box proportions of luxury sedans from that era. The roofline swept continuously from windshield to trunk, creating a wedge profile that suggested motion even when the car was stationary at a traffic light, a visual tension that traditional luxury sedans avoided. It was a radical departure from the upright, formal proportions that defined the luxury segment at that time. The design immediately sparked controversy. Observers noted similarities to Giugiaro's earlier Jaguar Kensington concept, a show car that had debuted several years before. The shared lineage was obvious in the angular haunches, the steeply raked rear glass, and the distinctive shoulder line. Some accused Toyota of copying their own designer's earlier work. The resemblance between the two was undeniable, but the real secret was not the shape. It was what Toyota was hiding in the Japanese version that Americans never got to see. Giugiaro's position was that the Aristo and GS development timeline did not support simple derivation, but the visual echo remained undeniable. Whether coincidence or deliberate reference, the car carried a distinctly European presence that separated it from every other vehicle wearing a Toyota or Lexus badge. The controversy highlighted the tension between European design language and Japanese brand identity. Inside, the departure from Lexus convention continued. Isao Tsukamoto designed an interior that period materials described as a cockpit orientation. The instrument binnacle curved toward the driver like the hull of a boat. The center console swept upward in a continuous arc, placing controls within deliberate reach. This was not the horizontal, expansive dashboard language that defined the LS400. It was intimate, driver-focused, and slightly claustrophobic in the way that sports sedans often are. The design asked the driver to engage with the machine rather than float above it in comfort. Every surface curved away from the passenger, creating a sense of being enclosed within the machine itself. The shape served function beyond aesthetics. Engineers achieved a 0.31 drag coefficient, a figure that mattered not for marketing brochures, but for the driving experience. The aerodynamic efficiency reduced wind noise at highway speeds and provided high-speed stability that complemented the suspension tuning. This was invisible engineering, the kind that reveals itself only when the car tracks straight at 80 miles per hour, while competitors require constant correction. The slippery profile supported the mission without explanation. Drivers noticed the difference during long highway journeys, where the reduced wind pressure created less fatigue. But the design represented a significant risk. The car looked like nothing else in Lexus showrooms of that era. It shared no visual DNA with the conservative ES300 or the stately LS400. The aggressive stance and fastback profile read as distinctly non-Japanese in a market where Lexus customers had come to expect predictable, dignified styling. The GS300 was angular when the brand was round, sharp when the brand was soft, eager when the brand was calm. It was, by the standards of Lexus's own identity, almost confrontational in stance. The design announced intentions the market would soon test. The shape had been set. The interior had been crafted. But a sports sedan is more than a fastback silhouette and a driver-focused cockpit. To fulfill the promise made by Giugiaro's lines, Toyota had to provide a heart that was just as uncompromising. The mechanical engineering would prove even more committed to the mission than the aesthetic choices had been, and more expensive as well. The commitment to sport luxury extended beneath the skin, with engineering choices that prioritized extraordinary durability over simple cost optimization. At the heart of the GS300 sat the 2JZGE, a 3-liter inline 6-cylinder representing Toyota's most robust and overbuilt engine architecture. The block was cast from iron rather than aluminum, a deliberate decision that added significant weight but provided exceptional rigidity for the inline 6's longer bore spacing. Engineers specified 7 bearings supporting the crankshaft, 1 positioned between each pair of cylinders, plus 1 at each end. This specification was typically found in heavy-duty commercial truck engines, not luxury passenger cars of that time. Consider what this means in practical terms. Lexus took the engineering philosophy of a heavy-duty delivery truck and wrapped it in Italian-styled sheet metal. The heart was built for 500,000 miles of commercial abuse. The body was built for the valet line at a luxury hotel. This was the contradiction at the core of the entire project. The 7-bearing design reduced load per journal and limited crankshaft deflection under load, contributing to the engine's documented longevity, even past 200,000 miles in properly maintained examples. The cylinder head used multi-layer steel gaskets, far more resistant to thermal fatigue and combustion pressure cycling than the composite gaskets common among the 1991-era competitors. Valve actuation employed a shim-over-bucket design, requiring periodic measurement and adjustment. 24 valves needed individual attention, with feeler gauges and precision shim replacement when clearances fell outside specification. This was not an engine engineered to minimize routine service visits or reduce production expenses at the factory. It was built to survive decades of operation with proper maintenance, a design philosophy that prioritized mechanical integrity over the convenience of sealed-for-life components, becoming fashionable elsewhere in the industry. But the hardware told only part of the story. The Japanese market Aristo offered powertrain combinations that never crossed the Pacific to North American showrooms or dealerships. Domestic buyers could select the 2JZGTE, a twin-turbocharged version producing 280 horsepower in Japanese domestic specification. More significantly, the Aristo was available with a 5-speed manual transmission paired to the naturally aspirated engine, offering direct mechanical control the engineering team had clearly intended for the platform from the beginning. These options represented the original vision, a genuine driver's car with tactile engagement and forced induction performance for those who wanted it. North American customers received a different vehicle entirely. The GS300 came only with the naturally aspirated engine producing 220 horsepower, a 60 horsepower deficit compared to the Japanese twin-turbo variant. More critically, the manual transmission was withheld entirely from the North American market, based on careful product planning decisions made in 1991. Every single GS300 sold in the United States and Canada left the Motomachi plant with the A340E 4-speed automatic, a heavy-duty unit selected by Lexus planners who determined manual gearboxes were simply inconsistent with luxury sedan expectations and would confuse buyers seeking traditional Lexus refinement. The transmission choice revealed the fundamental tension within the project. The A340E was directly related to the unit Toyota installed in the 80 series Land Cruiser and 4Runner, trucks renowned for their severe duty cycles and substantial weight. The result was a car that had the soul of a driver's sedan, but in practice behaved more like engineered heavy-duty machinery wrapped in luxury. This meant the transmission's torque quotity and case design were engineered for vehicles far heavier than the GS300, and for sustained low-speed, high-load operation exceeding any conceivable sedan application in normal driving. The gearbox was dramatically overbuilt for its task, contributing to its documented durability and service, but also signaling the permanent unresolved contradiction at the very heart of the car's mission. Lexus had built a sport sedan chassis with aggressive double wishbone suspension geometry and then equipped it with a truck transmission tuned for smoothness rather than shifting speed. The automatic featured normal and power shift modes controlled by electronic software, but it could not provide the direct mechanical connection the double wishbone suspension implied. The engine was mounted on liquid-filled mounts designed specifically to isolate vibration and maintain the acoustic refinement Lexus customers had come to expect. These mounts filtered the very mechanical feedback the chassis was engineered to transmit. The result was a car that pursued sport without harshness, performance without driver penalty. It was an attempt to split the difference between BMW's raw driver engagement and Lexus's traditional isolation, but the compromises left it in an ambiguous market position, satisfying neither camp completely. The hardware suggested aggression, while the calibration delivered tranquility. The engine could rev willingly to its red line, but the transmission would not rush between ratios. The suspension wanted to corner with precision, but the mounts damped the communication from the road surface. The GS300 was neither a fully committed sports sedan nor a traditional luxury car. It was something caught between definitions, waiting for the market to determine which identity it truly and completely preferred. The early Lexus buyer was not who Toyota had imagined when they benchmarked the BMW 5 Series. The demographic data revealed a fundamental mismatch between the car's engineering and its audience. Most GS300 buyers were not former BMW owners seeking Japanese reliability with sharper handling. They were former Cadillac and Lincoln owners who had grown tired of repair bills and inconsistent quality. They came to Lexus seeking something specific and well-defined. They wanted isolation. They wanted silence. They wanted the feeling that the road was happening somewhere far beneath them, transmitted through thick layers of rubber and fluid and acoustic insulation. Picture a typical buyer walking into a Lexus showroom in 1993. They have just traded in a Cadillac Fleetwood. They want to float above the pavement, to arrive without knowing how they got there. Now imagine their expression during the test drive, when the GS300 transmits every expansion joint through the steering wheel. To them, this was not sporty, it was a defect. These were not drivers who cared about camber control through corners. They did not want to feel the texture of the pavement through the steering wheel. The GS300 offered them something else entirely. Here was a chassis tuned for aggression, wrapped in styling that looked like nothing else in the Lexus showroom, sold to people who fundamentally wanted predictability. The sales numbers revealed the mismatch clearly. The GS300 never matched the volume of the LS400 flagship or the ES300 entry model. It occupied an uncomfortable middle ground, too expensive for the traditional Lexus buyer seeking value, too soft for the enthusiast seeking genuine sports sedan character. The automotive press recognized the engineering achievement. Road tests praised the handling balance, the steering precision, the double wishbone suspension geometry that maintained tire contact through corners. But reviewers questioned whether this car belonged in the Lexus lineup at all. The brand coherence was unclear. Was this a BMW competitor or a confused flagship? North American product planners made a decision that sealed the car's identity. The 5-speed manual transmission that was available in Japan would not cross the Pacific. The reasoning was simple and devastating. A clutch pedal was inconsistent with luxury sedan expectations. The decision removed one of the primary instruments of driver engagement that European competitors offered. It also revealed exactly who Lexus believed their customers to be. They were not drivers. They were passengers who happened to sit in the front seat. Market feedback confirmed the suspicion. Customer satisfaction surveys and dealer reports told a consistent story. Buyers preferred the ES300's softer suspension, its more conventional styling, its clearer expression of traditional Lexus values. They found the GS300 too strange, too aggressive in a way that made them uncomfortable. The car asked them to care about things they did not value. It offered a driving experience that assumed an interest in mechanical feedback that simply did not exist in the Lexus customer base. The gap between what Lexus built and what their customers wanted had become an unbridgeable canyon. Lexus had learned a painful lesson. You cannot engineer a customer into wanting a car they never asked for. With sales stalling, the company prepared to retreat from the very ground they had fought so hard to claim. The market had spoken with unmistakable clarity. By 1997, Lexus understood that the GS300's experiment in sport luxury aggression had failed to find its audience. The brand faced a choice that would define its trajectory for 2 decades. They could persist with the Grand Sport philosophy, refining the handling focus and accepting that Lexus would remain a niche player in the driver-oriented segment. Or they could retreat to the comfort, first engineering that had built their reputation with the LS400 and ES300. The decision came quickly and proved permanent. Lexus chose the path their customers had already indicated they preferred. The 1998 replacement, designated S160 internally, abandoned nearly every principle that had defined the first generation. Where the S140 had pursued handling precision through double wishbone geometry and moderate power, the new car pursued raw acceleration through displacement. The GS400 introduced a 4-liter V8, the 1UZFE, producing substantially more horsepower than the outgoing inline-6, but delivering it through a chassis tuned for compliance rather than communication. The second generation was faster in a straight line, but less interested in corners. The steering grew lighter, losing the precision that had defined the original. The suspension grew softer. The retreat from sport was already complete before the first S160 reached American dealerships. Subsequent generations continued the trajectory away from the original's intent with increasing technological complexity, masking the softening character. The third generation GS added adaptive suspension and electronic complexity, but softened the edges further through computer-controlled compliance. The fourth generation pursued design aggression through styling rather than chassis tuning, offering F-Sport packages that modified appearance more than substance, adding visual menace without mechanical commitment. Through each iteration, the fundamental premise of the S140, that Lexus could build a genuine BMW competitor through mechanical sincerity and driver-focused engineering, was gradually abandoned in favor of the brand's true competency, absolute refinement and isolation from the driving experience, the very qualities that had made the LS400 a legend. This retreat demonstrated a difficult truth about automotive branding that would influence Lexus product planning for decades. Engineering excellence in service of handling precision could not overcome market miscalculation. The GS300 was objectively capable in exactly the ways its engineers had prioritized. The double wishbone suspension geometry was correct. The steering was precise. The durability was exceptional. Yet it was wrong for Lexus. The customers who valued these qualities were not shopping at Lexus dealerships. They were at BMW showrooms, and they were not leaving. The experiment proved that brand identity is not something that can be engineered away through chassis tuning. It must be respected. The first-generation GS300 remains a fascinating dead end in automotive history, a monument to engineering ambition that outlived the strategy that created it. It was the future that was not meant to be, a moment when Toyota's resources and ambition created something unique, only to discover that their audience wanted tradition instead. The cars that survive today serve as rolling monuments to that miscalculation, overbuilt machines that outlasted the market conditions and corporate strategy that produced them. They drive today as they did in 1993, still capable, still precise, still waiting for customers who never arrived, still offering the sport luxury experience that Lexus briefly attempted and then permanently abandoned. The first-generation GS300s that survived the depreciation curve have proven remarkably difficult to kill. This was not accidental. The iron block construction that made the JZGE heavy also makes it resistant to the thermal cycling failures and bore distortion that claim aluminum engines after decades of service. The simple OBDI electronics on pre-1996 models allow fault diagnosis with a paperclip and the check engine light, rather than expensive scan tools. These were not choices made with 30-year survival in mind, yet they created a vehicle that outlasted the strategy that produced it. The parts ecosystem extends far beyond the original production numbers. The 2J's engine architecture is shared with the Toyota Supra, which developed one of the most robust aftermarket support networks of any Japanese engine. Machine shops familiar with the Supra's turbocharged variants apply that same knowledge to the naturally aspirated GS300. Oversized bearings and gasket kits fit the sedan's engine bay without modification. And because Toyota installed the A340E transmission in the 80 Series Land Cruiser as well, rebuild shops across North America know it intimately. Kits and torque converters remain widely available at prices that do not require dealer sourcing. What emerged from all this is a swap culture that would have surprised Lexus's product planners. Enthusiasts import twin-turbo JZGTE engines from Japanese market aristos and drop them into American GS300 shells. The engine mounts, wiring harnesses, and transmission bell housings were designed for compatibility from the factory, so the conversion is straightforward. The result is a sleeper sedan with power levels that finally match the chassis' capability. The car becomes what it was always meant to be, years after the brand walked away from the idea entirely. The story returns to where it began. Lexus built a forever machine. They built it to be the future, but the future they imagined never arrived. Something changed. The market spoke, and Lexus listened. Today, the luxury market celebrates screens that go dark after 8 years. It values the new over the enduring. The first-generation GS300 stands as a rolling monument to what happens when engineering ambition meets market reality. It remains what it was always meant to be, even after the brand abandoned the vision entirely. The surviving examples prove the point. These chassis accumulated 200,000 miles without drama. The iron block resisted bore distortion. The simple electronics refused to become obsolete. They are still on the road today, still offering the sport luxury experience that Lexus attempted once and then abandoned. The forever machine outlasted the future it was meant to create. There is another Lexus worth understanding. At 70 miles per hour, it does not sound like a machine. It sounds like silence. Meanwhile, its German rivals were turning into financial nightmares. That video is next, and by the end, you will understand exactly when luxury stopped, meaning what it used to.